So at the wedding, when it comes time for the rings, Oliver offers up the rings, and Chloe notices that the rings are different and that it's a gold kryptonite ring. So with an astounding no, she hits the ring away. There's a short fight ensuing between Clark and the possessed Oliver. The church clears out, and it proves that Clark's words are one of his most powerful weapons, because he could even talk Stevie Wonder into seeing. And he talks Oliver out of the trance, and they go over to the window and they see the coming apocalypse. So then everyone meets back at the Kent farm, and Chloe decides to go to Star City so she can access her computers and her databases because Watchtower's down. And so Clark sees Jonathan's ghost, and at this time Clark follows Jonathan out to the barn, and this is where we get a really great, heartfelt Jonathan, Martha, and Clark Kent scene. We get Jonathan saying that, it's time for you to listen to Jor-El's guidance. Your mother and I can't guide you anymore. And then Martha says something really nice. She says that before you came into our lives, we were praying for a miracle. We were, trying to have a child. And then when you found us, our prayers were answered, and you're the miracle. So you need to go out and be the world's miracle. And I thought that was really touching. And then with a tearful, goodbye smile, Clark rushes off to save the day. So then we have Tess waking up only to find Lionel Luthor standing above her, who then tells her that Lex has cloned himself and he has all the right organs he needs, but he needs a heart. And so who better to offer him a heart than his own sister? And so Tess is totally against this, and Lionel's saying that Luthors are survivors and Lex means everything to me, so you're going to give him your heart. So they go to strap Tess down. Tess ends up kicking a surgical tray full of instruments, ends up stealing a security guard's gun, and ends up shooting Lionel Luthor, which proves to me that Tess hadn't gone soft throughout season 9. So she escapes. Lionel opens the secret panel, revealing Lex's clone on this table like we saw in the promo, and with his dying breaths crawls towards Lex and activates him, and Darkseid appears. And Lionel basically makes a deal with Darkseid saying, take my heart and give it to Lex, and Darkseid says, okay, but give me your soul. So it rips out Lionel Luthor's heart, puts it in Lex, and then Lex wakes up. And then back to the Daily Planet, Clark and Lois are trying to track down Tess, and they end up listening to the last message received by Tess, and Clark had found her phone. So he looks at the video and he notices the license plate. So they track the license plate. Turns out it belongs to a company owned by Lionel Luthor. So Clark suspects that the mansion might be involved, so he goes to the mansion. And there is one of the best scenes in this whole episode. As Clark is looking around, he hears the ever-popular, "Hello, Clark." And out of the shadows walks Lex. And I like how in previous seasons, whenever Lex or Lionel Luthor would enter a room, they would always have a piece of advice or quote that would make them sound wise, like Vito or Michael Corleone from The Godfather. And this scene was a good example of that. Lex and Clark talk about their destinies. And Lex says a couple things that really stood out to me that I thought were really cool. That's why I refer to this scene as the hero and the villain, or the Batman and the Joker scene, because it really defines heroes and villains. And Lex says that, I used to think it was our families that made us who we are, and then I hoped it was our friends. But if you look at all the great men and women of history, they're defined by their enemies. And I thought that was really cool. And then they go on to say, Clark says, my destiny wasn't yours to take. And Lex replies with, I get that now. That's why I've made my own destiny. We were both great men, and we do have a destiny together, Clark, but it's not on the same side. And that's when I thought, okay, this is great. This is like Magneto and Charles Xavier. I mean, this is the villain basically saying, I'm not going to stop until you're destroyed, and the hero saying, I'm not going to stop, overcoming your obstacles. And then Clark says, I'll always be there to stop you. And then Lex says, oh, I'm counting on it. And then with one last line, Clark says, sorry I couldn't save you, Lex. And it was a really good moment. And then Clark, runs off. And I was afraid that that'd be the last time we'd see Lex in this episode, but thank goodness it wasn't. So then Oliver rushes to Watchtower, and using the computers, he's able to locate where Darkseid, Granny Goodness, and Possessed Guy are holed up. So puts on the Green Arrow outfit, shows up there. And they talk for a little bit. And Granny Goodness is surprised that Oliver overcame the spell, the Omega symbol. And so when Granny Goodness goes to take control of his mind, Oliver shoots 3 arrows. They impact all 3 of them, and they disappear into a cloud of smoke, which left me disappointed, but I thought, okay, maybe if those arrows had a little bit of the Phantom Zone crystal on them, maybe that's where they went, so I was hopeful. And so Lois is now on Air Force One. She got there because the Daily Planet, this woman who was originally scheduled for an interview and a meeting with the president, Lois forcibly switched places with her. So now Lois is on Air Force One. And while on there, she finds out that apocalypse is coming and the government knows about it. And not only are they going to try to attack the planet with nukes and missiles, but they're not going to warn anybody on Earth. So Lois convinces them to give the heroes a chance. And they say, okay, we'll give your heroes a shot, but they only have 5 minutes. Then it cuts to Clark returning to the Kent barn, and he's there to retrieve the power crystal that he took out of the fortress in the last episode. And before he leaves, he's confronted by Darkseid, but he's in Lionel Luthor's body, so we get a zombified looking Lionel with Darkseid's voice. And there, Darkseid confronts Clark and says that the Earth will fall to him, that darkness is going to prevail, and then Clark rebuttals with, even in the greatest darkness, there's always light, and we will overcome. And this angers Darkseid. Darkseid grabs Clark by the throat and throws him onto the loft. And there they do a slow motion camera angle of Clark crashing through it. And then they do a close-up of his eye, and they have this vision of Clark in the fortress being shown all of these moments from different seasons, all the way from Clark's very first save until now. And it was just really special, and I'm glad it wasn't, a 10-second little montage. It was a good 30 seconds, minute and a half, and I was tearing up because it brought back so many memories for me. And then it zooms out, and then I realized that Clark wasn't moving, but he was levitating. And so, he gathers up his energy and he blasts forward, obliterating Darkseid, causing him to explode. And then it cuts to Tess. Tess is at the Luthor Court building, and there she's confronted by Lex. And it was a really neat face-off because I was ready for it. I was like, okay, this is the time where Tess is gonna get killed off. I know it. And so they talk for a little bit, and basically Lex asks Tess if she got what she wanted out of Lionel's death, and she said no, because what she wanted was redemption. And so Lex approaches her and embraces her in a hug and says, I love you, sis. And then he stabs Tess. And I personally would have preferred him pushing her out the window too, but nonetheless, so Tess collapses in his arms, and just as she's falling, Lex says, I'm saving you, And she says, from what? And he says, from becoming me. And then with a smile, she says, too late. Clark already did that. And then she caresses Lex's face. And while she does that, she rubs on his face this black stuff, and he wipes it off and looks at it, and it's a toxin that he dealt with in Summerhold when he was in there. And it basically would wipe away his memories. And so he asks her, how much time do I have? And she says 30 seconds. And then he asks, what will I remember? And she says, nothing. And then they do probably my favorite part of the episode, because it had to happen. Lex, lets Tess fall, stands up, walks over the window, and has this flashback of all of his memories, starting from when Clark first showed up on Earth during the meteor shower, Julian, his relationship with Lana, his friendship with Clark, killing his dad, the last scene of him and Clark in the fortress, all of it gone. And again, it had to happen. This episode was a lot like, for me, Star Wars Episode 3, where things had to be forgotten and changes had to be made. And I mean, they couldn't have been done any better. And so Lex walks over to the window, and the marquee that reads Luthor Corp gets damaged, and a piece of the lettering falls away. So all we get is LX Corp, which is meant to imply Lex Corp, which is the company that he creates. So Clark goes to the fortress, and there Jor-El speaks to them and says that though your powers are from my blood, it was your parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent, and your time in Smallville, along with all the people you met there, that made you a hero. And I was like, yes, that's what Smallville is all about. And then from out of the ground comes this suit. And it was really special because Clark turns around and Jonathan is there holding the suit. I personally would have preferred Jor-El and Jonathan, or maybe just Jor-El, but nonetheless, it's always good to see John Snyder. So he gives Clark the suit. Clark takes it, and he flies out of the fortress, and as he's flying out, he's changing clothes. So by the time he flies out, he is Superman. And because Apocalypse is so close, it disrupts the weather, and this causes the Air Force One plane to start going down. Lois is scared, and she's looking out the window, but then she smiles with hope, and she sees her Man of Steel saving them and lifting the plane up. And then Superman goes and he pushes Apocalypse out of the atmosphere, far away from Earth, destroying it in a way. And this causes all of the Omega symbols to disappear. It's kind of like Blade Trinity meets Superman Returns, but it's okay. It's okay. And then we go fast forward 7 years. Chloe has finished the story of Superman, and she tucks in the small boy, and before she leaves the room, she glances at the boy, and the boy is glancing at the bows and arrows. And this got me thinking. It can mean one of two things. Either one, this is not Oliver's first son, Connor, but his second son, Roy, who becomes Red Arrow, and could be, insignificant in a way. Or this could be Chloe babysitting Oliver and Dinah's son, because Chloe doesn't get with Oliver. It just doesn't happen. I mean, if they do get together, then I can't see them being together for 7 years. I'm sorry. So then it goes to the Daily Planet, where we finally see Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen all grown up, Clark Kent. We see Lex on TV as the president, and we hear Perry White barking orders like only he can. And this was just really, really special. And I was tearing up. I was so happy that Smallville ended this way. I mean, I would have liked to have seen a close-up of Clark in the suit, but I understand why they didn't. I think they did it to prevent any gripes or people complaining that it was maybe too skin tight or maybe too much like the Batman suit and Batman and Robin. There's no telling what Tom Welling would have looked like in the suit. But all my gripes aside, just the overwhelming feeling of pride and joy this episode gave me overshadowed everything that I thought was wrong with the episode. So good job, Smallville. You had me in tears by the end of the episode. you know, just like the finale of Boy Meets World did, and MASH. So, and those are two of my favorite shows. So, good job, Smallville. My thank yous and everything will come in my next video. So, let me know what you guys thought. See ya.